Kind of looks like an What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Make It and Break It. My name's Andrew, and this is our DR-Z400, kind of the first bike for Mrs-MnB, but also the kind of just tooling around dirt bike, adventure-y, you know, fun bike of the channel. And today is a special day. It's the day before Mrs-MnB takes her first sort of real motorcycle ride. She's taken a couple little rides around like the neighborhood and once around the little island we're on right now. But tomorrow is going to be her first sort of ride where she takes some streets and possibly some highways and maybe hopefully a little bit of trail or at least forest service roads. So we want to get this bike as prepped as possible for that, which means I think we're going to try and figure out what's going on with the neutral starting situation here and add some protection to the bike and see how far we can get today. And then final thing today, I think we're going to talk about toolkits and taking what I think you need to take as kind of a minimum on your rides. So let's get to it. First things first, we got to pull off the seat here and take a look at our wiring here, because I think I know how to get rid of our neutral starting issue. So let's go. Alright, so we swapped to the GoPro just because it's not very nice today for some reason. It's August in the Northwest, it's supposed to be nice. I've got myself a climber manual here for the DR-Z400 because I wanted to know what the wiring's supposed to look like. This isn't a factory service manual. I might get one of those eventually, but these are easily available for 30 bucks as opposed to paying 200 for a factory service manual. And it gets you most of the way there if you know how to read them right. So I'm looking here for the neutral safety switch. So neutral, or the neutral switch. This is the switch that indicates on a dash, if you have one that indicates neutral. That's the switch that lights up the neutral light on your dash. And that's the only thing I can think of that would be stopping us, well, other than the relay issue, which I'll probably have to figure out eventually, but if I want to get this fixed right now, that's the only thing I can think of that would be wired weirdly in this bike so that this bike has to be in neutral to start. Somehow the signal or power from this switch is wired such that if it's not in neutral, it doesn't allow the starter button to connect with your actual starter. So my thought here is I've traced it back to a little connection right here, and the signal wires on this connection are the blue and black-white wires. And so my thought is, to validate that this is what's happening here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get this thing ready to start and just disconnect this thing and see if it behaves like the bike's in gear. And if that's the case, then if this is connected and I jump the two signal wires, hopefully it'll behave like the bike is always in neutral and this neutral starting issue won't be a problem. So we're gonna go see if we can do that. Okay, so that's everything in neutral, everything's set up ready to start. I have the gas turned off so it won't start. But we then kick it into first here. You notice, right? Doesn't start, everything else starts just like we were doing. We kick it back. Right? So, let's disconnect this connector. Alright, so that seems to be a way we can spoof this system here. So we're going to just cut these wires here. We are going to leave the sensor in place because there's this little rotating thing underneath the sensor, and this will keep grime and dirt and crap out of that. But we'll leave the sensor in place, but we'll just jump these two sensor wires, and hopefully the neutral starting problem will be fixed. Okay, so I guess this is our test to see if that's gonna work right. So we've got the bike here. Notice I don't have the clutch in, so it's in neutral. What I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna kick it into first, maybe. There we go. Now we're in first. So normally this wouldn't crank, but just to make sure, we're going to pull in the clutch while we're doing this. So theoretically, if this cranks, this bike would fire up. We fixed it! Let's get some electrical tape on that connection, and then get to putting some other stuff on this bike. Next thing we got here is our skid plate. So the last time we rode this, we did our first sort of dirt ride. I noticed that this thing was bottoming out quite a bit on some bumps, and part of that's because the suspension's too soft for as big as I am. But what you really want to do on a bike that's going to see any real amount of dirt riding is get a skid plate. That's why we put a skid plate on the HyperTenere back there. So for this bike, there's a ton of stuff out here. We don't have to custom build things. So I just went out and got a Moose Racing skid plate for the DR-Z or the KLX400, which is the Kawasaki version they made for 2 or 3 years, which is the same bike, just badged Kawasaki. And this is it. And it's a pretty simple install. It looks like it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 bolting locations and this little weirdo clamp location here to kind of clamp in here. Yeah, it should be pretty simple. These should just bolt up right to the existing mounting places on the bottom of the engine and the frame. This one's going to be a little interesting. So we'll go show you that here and kind of walk you through the installation real quick. Alright, so we're going to crawl under here and show you the bottom of the DR-Z. So this is the bottom of the DR-Z. No skid plate, stock skid plate removed. Normal mounting locations are as follows. 1 tab, 2 tab, 3 tab. The clamp goes over this piece here of the frame and bolts in. And then the 4th bolt goes down here on this cross piece. I'm not sure, this one looks like it's been hit and bent a little bit. I'm not sure if our bolt's going to fit in here, but the way to tell that's where it goes is on the skid plate, there's a hole for the drain bolt, the oil drain bolt, which is right here. And so, and then that bolt is behind it. So that's how you kind of orientate yourself here. But it's pretty simple. You just kind of bolt it all up in these 4 spots. And this 5th spot, if we can make it work. And you're good to go. Alright, so we have our skid plate on there, and looks pretty good. It's pretty solidly in there, you know, we can give it a kick. Everything seems to go. Sorry for the shaky cam there. One thing to note, if we go look underneath here, you see the fasteners are black instead of the silver that came with it. That's because I actually transitioned from the Torx bit bolts to hex head bolts that I just pulled from a standard M6 setup that I have. And that's because I don't have anything else on this entire bike, or any of my bikes, that is a Torx bit head. So when we're talking about bringing tools along with you for a dual sport ride, having Torx bits purely for your skid plate makes no sense. It's a bunch of extra weight for essentially nothing. So I replaced those with hex head bolts that match sizes that are pretty common on these bikes, so that I don't have to bring an extra set of tools purely to mess with my skid plate if I need to. Speaking of tools, let's go take a look at the sort of tooling setup we're going to bring on tomorrow's ride. Alright, so we have kind of the tooling we're bringing tomorrow. This is more tooling than I would normally bring, but I've not had a chance to go through that bike or this bike, do a full nut and bolt check and figure out, okay, I need, you know, an 8mm socket, a 10mm socket, a 12mm socket. I need a 5, a 7, and a 4.5 millimeter Allen wrench hex key. You know, whatever you might need. So we're gonna overbring some tooling and then just throw it on like the back of the Yamaha or something like that. So the idea here when you're bringing tools is you want to bring enough tools to be able to fix your bike and get home. So actually, I forgot one thing. Hold on. I forgot this stuff because these are still basically unproven bikes, so there might be electrical problems. And with these, we can probably figure it out for at least a short-term run home or whatever we need to do. So the idea here is we have a couple socket sets. I wouldn't necessarily suggest bringing a big socket set like this, but it's the smallest one I have that, well, that kind of is carryable around. A couple socket sets. Bring yourself some screwdrivers, small wrenches for getting into small places you can't get anywhere else, hex keys. I did specifically bring these because these fit the crash bars on the HyperTenere over there. So that's how I would get the crash bars off if I needed to. And then these sorts of wrenches are kind of like your do-all wrenches. You'll probably end up using most of these more than maybe some of that stuff on the other end, because this is your all 16th wrench. We basically use it to grab onto like axle nuts and stuff that's too big, especially if you don't have a tire iron that's sized correctly for your axle nuts. And then this is a smaller version of that that could get used for whatever, or worst case scenario, if you happen to go, say, break a handle of some sort or another, you can clamp this on to the nub up in here and then use this as a brake handle in the worst case scenario. So this one doubles up, kind of handy. Then just wrenches and little pliers for whatever. So the idea is you take this up and package it up into like a small pack. Ideally, you're actually going to package up like only this one, this one, that one, a couple of these, maybe a couple of these, and then like these two, and maybe one of these wrenches. And that would be your entire like setup. And you just roll it up into a package and throw it in your backpack or on your bike somewhere, and that's your toolkit for dual sporting. All right, so we've strapped on our toolkit on the back of the Yamaha here. This is one of my favorite sets. This is a Kriega dry bag setup that kind of just straps in wherever. I take it on all my trips, and it's been on many thousands of miles of motorcycle trips. But tomorrow it's going to be carrying tools for us because I brought way too many. But I think that's it for us today. Thanks for watching, guys. Tomorrow, me and Mrs-MnB are going to take our first sort of actual motorcycle ride together for like a couple hours and get her on a bike and get her used to it and test out the HyperTenere a little bit. See if we can't crash that. I don't know why I'm walking this way, but that's what we're doing. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. My name's Andrew. This is my Make and Break It YouTube channel. Like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. And keep in mind, whether you're making it or breaking it, it doesn't have to be pretty, but it probably should be functional. We'll catch y'all later.